Praise the Lord. I'm glad you're all here. Thank you for being here. Well, lad, I'm glad you're here. Danielle, I'm glad you're here. Demetria, Maria Garcia, all the rest is here. I'm glad you're here. Please hit the like button. Thank you very much. Yes. In this live stream, I want to highlight a certain obsession that even believers tend to be afflicted by. Now, I'm not saying that those believers are obsessed, but this obsession tends to affect their behavior. Let me say it like that. Now, this obsession is especially known amongst those who see what goes on and who want improvement. Now, please hit the like button, subscribe if you aren't subscribed, consider becoming a member, but that's on you, that's voluntarily. Donations are free and welcome. Praise the Lord for all that sent. It's all used for this ministry. Look, I'm going to share the screen with you, and I want to talk about two words very briefly, and I'm going to explain to you how to relate to this topic. Hold on, let me share the screen. All right, let's see how this works. Can you all see the screen? Let me know, please. Can you see it? All right. First is the word. Hold on. That's the wrong screen over there. I need to be over here. Let's start with the word fetish. Fetish is a form of sexual desire in which gratification is linked to an abnormal degree to a particular object, item of clothing, part of the body, etc. For example, a man with a fetish for surgical masks. But okay, fetish also has a second meaning, an inanimate object worshipped for its supposed magical powers or because it's considered to be inhabited by a spirit. This is something that happens in paganism. A synonym of a fetish is a talisman or a charm or an amulet or a totem, an icon or an idol. Or you get me? So the second meaning of fetish is when you when you worship a specific inanimate object. It's inanimate, so it doesn't have any life in it. When you worship a lifeless object because you believe there's life in it. For example, if there's a Buddha statue and you have Buddhists bowing down to the Buddha statue, they have a fetish for this Buddha figure. When you have people seeing a statue of what they consider to be Mary, Jesus' mother, and they pray to Mary, that's a fetish too. Oh, I know some Roman Catholics will be upset with me, but I'm just saying that as it is. There is no life in that statue. It's just a statue, okay? There is no life in it. However, there are times evil spirits enter into inanimate objects, for example, dolls. There are places on the earth as well, in and outside of Africa, where you have small houses or even villages with dolls. And all those dolls are inhabited by evil spirits. And the evil spirits from time to time move through those dolls. So you would think, oh, the doll moved by itself. No, it's a demon within the doll. So when you have an inanimate object inhabited by an evil spirit, that's a fetish too. Is it clear to you what a fetish is? Let me know in the live chat. The first meaning is this weird sexual longing that's unnatural. For example, someone is obsessed with masks, or someone is obsessed with toes, or obsessed with well, whatever body part. Instead of having the full sexual experience, only focus on one body part. That's the first meaning. Second meaning is worshiping an inanimate object or a possessed object. Now, let's go to revolution. What is a revolution? A revolution can mean two things: a forcible overthrow of a government or social order. It doesn't have to be a government. It can be a social order. What's the difference between a government or a social order? They're not the same. And I'm an anthropologist, so I can explain to you. A government is a cult that claims ownership of a population. That's what government is. A social order is something the public establishes as normal. For example, in some cultures, it's normal to beat your children. In other cultures, you do that, you go to prison. In some cultures, it's a norm that you always make room for older people. In some cultures, they don't think to do that. So, a social order are collective agreements the public agrees to. For example, it can be that in a city there's a lot of child molestation going on, but the public does not mention the child molestation because it's too embarrassing. So the child molestation in that city is part of the social order. The social order isn't just the language you speak or the clothes you wear or the flag that's on the pole. A social order is anything the public agrees to maintain, whether good or bad. So if there's a lot of child abuse or there's a lot of women being hated towards females, that can be part of social order too. So understand this: a revolution is when you forcibly, so you don't ask, you don't pray, you don't negotiate, you forcefully overthrow either a government or a social order in favor of a new system. So there's something new you want to put in place to replace what's already there. And you know that because the thing in place is invested in, nobody's going to agree to put it away. So you have to force it in. That is a revolution. A revolution can also be an instance of revolving. Okay, she just revolve around something. But here's a better explanation of the term revolution: a sudden, radical, or complete change, or a fundamental change in political organizations, especially the overthrow or renunciation of one government or ruler and the substitution of another by the governed. Well, this is more focused on the political side, but it's a sudden radical change. That's what a revolution is. Now, this live stream, in this live stream, I say there's a revolution fetish. What I mean with that, a lot of people in the world, they idolize revolutions. They love to talk about revolutions, even when those revolutions never actually happened. For example, you have the American Revolution, so-called between 1765 and 1791. I've already explained to you a lot of things that are wrong with this American Revolution. We'll go into it right now. You have the Industrial Revolution. Now, the Industrial Revolution actually happened. It did. We are the result of it. You also have the Sexual Revolution of the 1960s. Yep, the sexual revolution that happened. So I'm not saying revolutions don't happen in the world. They obviously do happen. Some revolutions are hoaxes or politicized in some with the United States and with a lot of Latin American countries too. Other revolutions did happen, but people don't want to admit them, like the Haitian Revolution. That's one revolution you will not hear about. Even in school books, you want to talk about it. But if you do your research, you find out the Haitian Revolution was a big event that changed the course of world history. The Haitian Revolution didn't only happen on the island of Hispaniola, it also happened at the Mississippi region in North America. But they ought to leave that part out. So the Haitian Revolution was an actual, real revolution that they didn't want to acknowledge. So revolutions, whether they truly happened or not, revolutions, and a lot of people are so into revolutions. They want the revolutionary spirit. But let me tell you one thing about revolutions. A revolution is a sudden, swift, radical change. But here's the issue with revolutions: a revolution does not guarantee improvement. Okay, let's talk about the revolution from the Bible, the Exodus. The Exodus was a revolution. Remember, the Israelites as a nation grew in Egypt. They came with 70 human beings to the province Goshen, and they turned into a nation of around 3 million people over a span of 2.5 centuries. And they survived genocide also. So the Israelites, besides being a quite sexually active population, they expanded. But they expanded in Egypt. They didn't have their own homeland. So they were seen as Egyptian citizens or Egyptian subjects. And many of them were related to Egyptians and Ethiopians anyway. So now the Israelites who were enslaved and oppressed, they were known worldwide as the slaves of Egypt. Now they were the richest and wealthiest nation on the earth. And the Egyptian empire that dominated the world crashed. That was such a change for the world. But look at this. Were the Israelites ready to live with this change? Were they ready for it? No, they were not. Because when they were there in the desert, going through the Sinai desert, a lot of them began to long back to Egypt. Now, the Egyptian empire was no more, it was gone. But the population was shaped by the Egyptian empire. So they were God took them out of Egypt, but they still had Egypt inside of them. That murmuring complaint they did towards Moses, it is what Pharaoh used to do towards them. Pharaoh and the Egyptian government used to murmur and complain towards him all the time. So they grew up believing that they have a right to be mistreated. They had a victim fetish. That's what the Israelites had. So when they were out of Egypt, this victim fetish it expressed itself. That's why they kept attacking Moses because they expected Moses to do the attacking on them. They were they were used to being abused. They were used to being abused and molested. So they expected Moses to have a similar role. But Moses did not have that role. So they tried to make Moses angry, try to provoke Moses to be like Pharaoh. So yes, the Exodus was a good thing. It was a great thing that glorified Heavenly Father. But what it didn't intend to do is to transform the Israelites. That's something they had to surrender to the Heavenly Father to be transformed. All right. So the Exodus did not guarantee the improvement of the Israelite public that was freed from Egypt. Now, let's look at the rest of the world. When the Egyptian empire crashed and the Israelites were delivered through the Red Sea, this news spread all over the earth. And in the land of Canaan, that is the area that God wanted to give the Israelites, all the inhabitants of Canaan, the Canaanites, were terrified, thinking, oh Lord, the Israelites were talking about inheriting this land, Canaan. Oh, we used to laugh about them. They're just those are slave stories, those are just fairy tales that their ancestor Abraham told them. But oh Lord, they're really free now? 3 million people? And they're all healthy, and they have all the money of the Egyptian empire, and they're on the way. Oh Lord, they were terrified. Well, look at this. There were people on the earth who simply refused to accept the reality that that Pharaoh was shut down, that the Egyptian empire was no more, and now were the Israelites were were the richest and wealthiest nation on the earth. They would not accept it. The Amalekites, which had a lot of Nephilim influence, by the way, they attacked the Israelites militarily. Later, the Edomites became hostile towards Israelites too. There were even some of the regional chiefs who went to look for a warlock, Biliam, in order to curse Israel. So what happened there was there was a revolution that happened. Was the revolution wrong? No. The revolution was God's will. However, the Israelites were not meant to rely on that revolution. The revolution was there to push them forward, but the revolution was not there for them to hold on to it. Oh, let's say it one more time. The revolution was meant to push the Israelites forwards. It was not meant for them to hold on to the revolution. But what happens in the world? In the world, worldlings they hold on to revolutions, even if revolutions happened decades ago. Look, it's one thing to celebrate an historical event. There's nothing wrong with celebrating the Passover or celebrating the Exodus from Egypt. There's nothing wrong with that. However, there is something wrong with holding on to it and not realize what it was meant to do. So what happened was that the mankind in general did not accept the new situation. Let me tell you, over, let me say, you could say almost over 1,000 years after the Exodus, that means all from the time of Moses all the way to the beginning of the Greek Empire. The from the nation of Israel, the tribe of Judah, which was the biggest tribe, became the chosen tribe. The other tribes were scattered over the earth, mainly in Asia. Some will even end up all the way to ancient Japan and all of that, and Polynesia, but that's another topic. What happened is that even 1,000 years after the Exodus, there were still people on the earth who did not want to recognize Judah as a nation. Judah was separated from Israel and became a separate nation. Still, people tried to keep invading Judah. They went through multiple captivities. After the exodus from Egypt, there were many captivities they went through, not only the Babylonian captivity. Why was the world so obsessed with putting the Israelites, namely the tribe of Judah, in bondage? Because they would not accept that the glorious days of Egypt were over. It goes so far. With the breakdown of the Egyptian empire, the Assyrians took on the leading role in the world's politics. And the Assyrians attempt to revive the former glory of Egypt. The Assyrians valued Egypt and wanted to restore it back. Later, the Babylonians attempted to do the same, but Nebuchadnezzar did not succeed in annexing Egypt. He didn't succeed in it. Also because Egypt had backup from ancient Ethiopia. Then you had the Medo-Persian Empire. They also invested a lot in Egypt. Why were all those world empires investing in Egypt? Why were they not exploiting and looting Egypt? It is because they rather have Egypt being restored with its over sexualized culture than to recognize the revolution that God brought. And then came the Greek Empire, established by Alexander of Macedonia. I don't call him the Great because he's not great to me. And Alexander, this Nephilim son of Satan, he did not invest much in Egypt. Instead, he invested in Greece because Satan, as well as the demons, realized we tried to revive Egypt so much. Listen, it has been over 1,000 years. We have to give it up and move on from reviving Egypt. It's over. What God did, He did. We can't revive Egypt to its former glory. So Alexander shifted towards Greece. And that was the focus has been ever since. Not on the country Greece, but on this Greek system we have in this world. So white supremacy is this ancient Greek devil worship. That's what it is. That's recycled throughout the generations. And now it's through the Catholic system and it continues in the world. So white supremacy has been around for, you would say, 2,350 years, something like that. Okay? It's the longest surviving system of the world. And it's still here today because it adapted over time. In ancient times, after around 200 years after the Greek Empire was established, the Greeks realized that, you know what, we have a very rough culture over here, but if we want to take a hold on those Europeans over there, the Celts and those other tribes in Europe, then we have to have, develop a soft culture to include those other nations. That's how Roman culture came into being. So Roman culture was actually Greece, was actually the second level of Greece. Roman culture was a softened version of the Greek culture. That's why they adopted the gods from Greece and all of that, because Rome was like Greece 2.0. It was an upgrade of Greece. That's how it was perceived. They still use the Greek language internationally. They still use Greek culture, but Roman culture was a softer version of it. But there were Roman emperors who still went to Greece to study, and they enacted Greek culture in the open. So understand is this Greek system of white supremacy has is the longest surviving man-made system that has been around, and it will be around till Christ comes back and abolish it. So understand this: ancient Egypt, its former glory, did never come back. And later in history, the Egyptians even submitted to Alexander when he came. They begged Alexander to become their pharaoh. And Alexander, when he arrived, said, I'm going to build a new capital named after myself, Alexandria. And later, Alexandria was built, and Alexandria was the busiest city in ancient times, till it was overtaken by Rome later on. So, understand this. I already explained in the previous live stream that white supremacy has copycat the paganism from Africa, but they reformed it a little bit in a sociopathic manner just to have this whiteness image to worship Apollo. That's what they've done. So white supremacy uses voodoo in order to keep itself going. But I explained it in the previous live, so please watch that one. Just understand the following: that a revolution can be a good thing. God gives revolutions, absolutely. But a revolution does not guarantee that the people will improve. Or it can be that the revolution benefits and improves the population, but outsiders may still decide we're not taking this, we're not having it. Let's think about the Haitian Revolution. The Haitian Revolution lasted for almost 2 decades. People say Rashid 1791 was the official date it began. It ended in 1804. There were fights before that, so you have to count 2 decades. For 2 decades, the Haitians were fighting to abolish slavery and to be free. And they went extremely far. And it was a believer, Toussaint Louverture, who accomplished the victory. It was a Judean believer that accomplished it. They tried to sabotage that, and yet this devil worshiper there, who was into voodoo, uh, Dessalines, and he did a massacre of the white soldiers from France. That was what he did. Toussaint Louverture already got the victory, but the public was afraid it would be taken away from them, so they went on to this blood sacrifice for voodoo. That's what they've done. And they killed a lot of people. Also, a lot of blacks who never considered cooning, they killed them. There were only Germans and Polish people that were supporting the revolution that were allowed to stay. That's how Haiti and Poland got this bond in the past. But a lot of people have forgotten about that. But some Polish people still remember that there were white Polish people who were on the side of Haiti, even sponsoring Haiti. But a lot of Polish people don't know that. But if you're from Poland, now you know it. There were Polish believers. Because remember, Toussaint Louverture was a believer. Not everyone in the Haitian Revolution were believers. Some were into food, all types of weird crap. But it was a believer that led it, and yet white believers from Poland and some from German areas supporting them. So just so you know. So what I'm pointing out is that the Haitian Revolution was a big thing. It shook the world's politics. But look at this. How are people treating Haiti today? How are they treating Haiti today? Oh, I forgot. They keep trying to sabotage Haiti. They keep looking down on Haiti. They keep trying to hinder Haiti. Why are they doing that? It is because the legacy of Haiti is an embarrassment to this Greek white supremacist system. It is. So they cannot change history. They can't turn back time. It happened. And the facts are there. So now they try to undermine the legacy by not talking about it or pretend like it never happened, or if they have to admit it, only to tell certain parts of it, that's what they do. Now, the Haitian Revolution benefited the human species. It did. It forced slavery to be abolished everywhere. Yes, there were British people willing to abolish slavery, but only for financial reasons. They were willing to do slavery indirectly still, in another way, to indentured labor. But Haiti said, no, it's over. To some literature, the believer even wrote a constitution for Haiti also. What I'm pointing out is that the Haitian Revolution happened, it benefited a lot of people, not only blacks, it benefited everyone indirectly. Blacks directly, others indirectly. Do people appreciate the Haitian Revolution of the indirect benefits for everyone? No. Why? Because the world still wants to go back to the 18th century when they would escape by looking down on Negroes. The world still wants to go back to that time. So the revolution happened, and it was sudden because they thought all those Negroes down there are fighting and rioting, or they're also rioting over there in the Mississippi River. Oh, you know what, man? Oh, Spain is giving up the Louisiana territory. Oh, Americans want to buy it. Oh, they're going to teach us Negroes a lesson. Well, that didn't work out. Oh, wait. While you guys are focused on shut down the Negroes at the Mississippi, the Negroes in Haiti declared the independence has succeeded. Oh, now Napoleon, you want to send thousands of tens of thousands of soldiers to bring back slavery? Oh, dude, it's not going to work. So Haiti succeeded. It benefited everyone indirectly. Everyone's intellect it benefited, but people don't want to admit it. So the revolution happened. And I am from Haitian ancestry, so I'm proud to be of Haitian ancestry. My grandmother from father's side was a Haitian woman, a beautiful Haitian black woman. I'm not sure whether that part of my ancestry was clean. They may have been involved in voodoo too and all that. Well, that was on them. There's nothing I can do about that. But I'm proud to be a descendant of those that revolted against this colonial oppression. I'm happy with it. And on Curacao, inspired by the Haitian revolt, was also revolt on Curacao too. And the revolt on Curacao led to the slaves getting certain civil rights. So both I'm from Curacao and I have Haitian ancestors. I'm happy with that. However, what I won't do is hold on to the revolution that happened. The revolution happened to push us all forward. And the thing is, the world has shown they want to stay backwards. Yes, I do remember the revolution. I don't agree with everything that happened during the revolution. There were also some horrible things that happened. But at least the revolution happened and the benefits are here. But realize the revolution is not guaranteed that everyone will agree with it and get along with it. If even the Exodus, which was a God ordained revolution, if that itself did not guarantee that people would get along with it, what do you think man made revolutions? Even if even believe such revolution, why do you think people will get along with that automatically? It won't happen. So revolutions are important. But here's the thing about revolution. A revolution will always bring losers. I'm not talking about if there's a tyranny going on and you overthrow the tyrants. The tyrants will lose, but who cares about the tyrants who oppressing the people? I'm talking about them. What I'm pointing out to you is that just think about it. If people are used to escaping all the time, if they're used to making excuses, if they're used to running away from issue in life as a community, and now you have one or two or three or a bunch of individuals shutting down the negativity, that negativity is the fruit of their neglect. So if you shut down their neglect, you're actually shutting them down. And they have to admit that it's their fault, they are to blame because they were neglecting and their neglect let all these bad things happen. So when the revolutionaries come in and shut down their neglect, the public has to admit, okay, ooh, we can't excuse ourselves anymore. But will the public surrender willingly? No, they will not. They will only get along externally because they have no other choice. But deep down inside, they're going to be angry. And when they're angry, they're going to look for people to victimize. That's why many revolutions in the world end up in mass bloodshed. Now, some revolutions had bloodshed because people really didn't want to accept the revolution, like with the Haitian Revolution. Why didn't Napoleon just say, okay, it's over, you guys won? Why they sent, I believe it was between 50,000 and 75,000 soldiers. Why did he send a whole navy armed over there? That shows you they were not willing to give up. So, well, they got the confrontation and they've lost. Praise God for the Haitian Revolution. But this is what I mean. The revolution happens. They've won. The Sun Literature won. Why wouldn't they submit? Why don't people just say, okay, okay, it's over now? No, 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 no. Let's send 50,000 to 75,000 soldiers over there. Let's send British soldiers too. We need to teach those Negroes a lesson. Okay, okay, you guys got what you want. That's your confrontation, and now you guys lost. But look at this. A lot of I'm not talking about revolutions inspired by believers. Even listen, revolutions by worldlings, all 9 out of 10 times end up in mass bloodshed, not immediately, but over time. Understand this: a revolution implies that one establishment is shut down and another one is put in its place. Let me give you something. Let's say there is this dictator in Colombia. Let's say use Peru for example. Let's say in Peru there's a dictator, and the Peruvian population is fed up with this dictator. Everyone agrees this dictator needs to go. But hold on, this dictator has a lot of collaborators, or else he couldn't oppress you all. So you guys are also part of the oppression because how come you have millions of people and you have only a small gang of warlocks and they have to way with you like that? Somewhere's something wrong with you guys. But hey, the public doesn't want to look at that. They only want to cry and bitch about this dictator and his cult. Okay, so one day you have a bunch of believers, Peruvian believers coming and kicking out the warlocks. Now the oppression is gone. The people rejoice. But now, what comes in its place? There must be something in its place. Okay, how does the community continue further? Who is going to take the lead? Not the believers take the lead. Not the politics say, hold on a minute. We're glad you kicked out the dictator. Who told you we want you guys? We never asked for your leadership for all of this. Then people say, but then there could be division. Some people say, hey, hey, those revolutionaries kicked out the dictator. So give us some honor. Then the rest say, yeah, okay, but we never asked for this. Now you're going to have civil war amongst the population. Because here's the thing. They were in agreement with oppression. Yes, they were against oppression. Yes, they were hating the dictator, but they were part of the oppression because they're the ones collaborating with it, unbeknownst to them. So now that the oppression is gone, they have to unlearn everything that made them who they were. So now that they have to change for the better, they have to get along with newness and they have to let go of all the old benefits they had. And a lot of human beings don't want this. Maybe, maybe, for example, during slavery, it was easy to make a lot of money because you had a lot of free labor. When slavery was abolished, now you had to pay everyone. So now you had to have an economy that meet everyone's needs because slavery was abolished. So now all the people that benefited from the slave labor now had to see an increase in prices and had to see more conflict in the community because before that everyone was happy. Oh, at least we're not slaves, at least we're free. But now they can't use that anymore to bond together. Now they have to bond on other things. So that's why after of the abolition of slavery, you had the rise of political parties. Political parties rose after the abolishment of slavery. Why? Because the rise of political parties was to replace the social cohesion that the world had at expense of the Negroes. That's why you have the political parties rose. Whether it's left wing or right wing, or what you have today, the centric, which is kind of combination of the two, political parties rose in the early 19th century. Now they have their origins in the 18th century, but they emerged in the early 19th century to replace the cohesion that came from looking down on those enslaved. That's what it comes down to. So now, instead of everyone getting along saying, hey, we're free people, at least we're not enslaved, now everyone is thinking, hey, I belong to that party, or I belong to this party. Now you have all these divisions. So the people that were older have to give up this easy cohesion to one another. So what I'm saying is every revolution knows losers, people who are losing. Now, the people that lose, if they participate with the revolution and get and go ahead, they can win too. But many don't want to. So That is why a revolution can succeed, but don't put your hopes on a revolution. Let me tell you, if a lot of people can't stand you, it is because those people decided to make you the negative focus. By making you the negative focus, they don't have to look at themselves and they don't have to look at one another. Now Kevin won't see his wife is cheating on him. Now Sabrina won't see that she's actually quite narcissistic towards people in her life. Now Maria doesn't have to face that her parents never wanted her, but only got along with her. Now Patrick doesn't have to realize that everyone around him is just tolerating him because he was abused as a child. People feel guilty by to abandon him. So by everyone having a negative focus on you, they don't have to look at themselves or others around them. So can build themselves out from facing issues. So if people made up their minds that they don't want to be realistic, they don't want to look for solutions, just want to escape, and now they've made their minds to escape by being negative against you, what makes you think that if your situation improves, people are going to change? If you're homeless and people are looking down on you, okay, you don't see me? Okay. If you're homeless and people can't stand you, what makes you think if you become a CEO tomorrow overnight, people are going to love you? Won't happen. So your situation may improve, your quality of life will improve, but the way people treat you may not improve. They may lessen their anger towards you, but it doesn't mean they will treat you better. They may even treat you worse because now you are proof against them. Now, it's written in Psalms 23 that the Heavenly Father prepares a table for you in the presence of your enemies. Now, a lot of people think that means, oh, God's going to shower me with benefits just to prove to everyone that I'm worth it. That's not what it means. God preparing a table before you in the presence of your enemies means that He is dedicated to improve you and benefit you no matter what comes against you. So God is showing His faithfulness towards you by benefiting you and blessing you in front of everyone who was against you. But look at this. He prepares a table in the presence of your enemies. He does not teleport a table in front of your enemies. And what I'm saying here is that God can bring a revolution. Sometimes we want revolution to happen in our lives. I can understand, especially when it comes to finance, we want a revolution. I can understand that. But listen to this. What if a revolution is not what you need? What if a revolution would only make things worse for you in the long run? The Heavenly Father would often start a process with you, and through this process, his faithfulness is revealed through you. Now, let me say it like this. Let's say you're homeless today, and tomorrow you're a millionaire. People can then say, wow, it went too fast for me. I couldn't handle it. They will use your swift financial change as an excuse for how they're misbehaving. And then they'll blame it on you. But if you were homeless and within 5 years you became a millionaire, that is 5 years of steps and development. If then after the end of 5 years, when you're a millionaire, people begin to complain about you, everyone else can tell, hold on a minute. 5 years ago, this guy was homeless. Today he's a millionaire. So he's been active, he's been doing things. What have you guys been doing? You guys are bitching, complaining about him today, as you were doing 5 years ago when he was homeless. He didn't steal from anyone. He didn't rob any of you guys. He didn't exploit you. He just was just blessed. What's going on with you? Why are you still upset with him? Didn't you improve? So sometimes God will give you a process because the process will benefit you more than the swift revolution. Often we want a swift revolution. I can understand why we want a swift revolution, of course. But a swift revolution is not always what you need. Sometimes, sometimes a swift process is better than a swift revolution because the thing is, a revolution does not take away that you need to process the change. If you were abused in the past and now you're treated well, you need still need to process you were being abused back then. And you need to realize the shock that you could have been dead today or you could have been worse off. Those are the shocks you need to process. So even when a revolution happens, you still need to process the past so that you can operate well in the present. You can't just forget the past or throw the past behind you. You're not in the past. You're not inventing on the past, but you have to process the past. And a lot of people want the revolution because think, oh, when we have a revolution, we can forget about the past, throw it all behind us like it never happened. That's not reality. You have to process the past. You have to. So you can long for a revolution, but when God doesn't give a revolution in your life, praise Him. Because sometimes a process is much better than the sudden radical change you're longing for. Again, there's nothing wrong with a sudden radical change for the better. But realize sometimes a revolution will make things worse for you in the long run. If God gives you a process and during the process people abandon you, they ghost you, now all those people remove themselves. So now at the end of the process, you're better off and you don't have all those people retaliating against you. But if God gives you a revolution, bang, into their faces, you're all over the place. Now they're still around, and now they're going to say, oh, he overtook us, he overwhelmed us with it. Now they can use that as an excuse against you. And once they have that excuse, they'll keep using it. But now that God gives you a process, during the process, they expose themselves. And because they expose themselves, they lose credibility. And now you're better off. Now, God can give you a revolution, but don't just long for a revolution. When God decides to give you a process, take the process. Don't cry and insist on revolution if God gives you a process. Whatever God gives you, whether it's a revolution or a process, that's what works best for you. You should embrace His leadership. Is this clear to you? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know. Is this clear to you? If you have any questions about the topic, you can ask them now. If you have to leave, you can leave. I'm not going to hold you longer here. Oh, just one thing I want to say still. A lot of you are disappointed because you didn't get the revolution. Don't be. The revolution would not have benefited you at all. That's why God didn't give it to you. God gave you a process to rejoice in the process. If it includes people cutthroating you, kicking you out, ghosting you, and all of that, let it happen. It works in your favor. It works in your favor, absolutely. So decree and declare. But whether God allows it to be a revolution or a process, keep decreeing, declaring, walk by faith, keep doing all of that. Whether it's a revolution or a process, embrace the leadership of the Heavenly Father. That's what we need to do. Now, Satan may give you a revolution if you insist on it. Hear me well. Sometimes you're so insisting on a revolution. By the way, there's nothing wrong with insisting on something. Insisting on something, there's nothing wrong with that. As long as what you're insisting for is worth it. If what you're insisting on is worth it, keep insisting. But there are times we insist on something that's not going to be in our best interest. So if you insist on a revolution, Satan may tell you, "Hey, Rashid, I have some people that can help you out. There's some people from church over here, Rashid. They can help you out. This is going to go much quicker." Satan would be Satan is more than happy to to grant you a revolution. Satan is a master in bringing revolutions, but Satan knows revolutions tend to backfire, especially if the ramifications for the public are enormous. So some believers got a satanic revolution in their lives, but they think they got a breakthrough. Now, how to distinguish a breakthrough, a genuine breakthrough, from a satanic revolution? Well, it's simple. A satanic revolution is always swift. A breakthrough goes hand in hand with a fight. Because here's the thing, with a revolution, the change happens and the retaliation comes later. With a breakthrough, you're going through the fight against you and you're breaking through. That's the difference. A revolution is sudden, bang, here, there, everywhere. A breakthrough is you breaking through. So you're going through the resistance and you break through. So you know you're going through a fight and you're winning. And once you win, all the enemies scamper, all the opposers are so exhausted, you've won. That's a breakthrough. If things just happen, something like that, expect in the future it's going to be an enormous backlash against you that you're not prepared for. That's why you have people For example, winning the lottery, and within a year they're homeless, or within a few years they're dead. That's why you have people getting married quickly and they end up in a divorce later with broken families. That's why you have people starting businesses. Their business becomes an enormous success, and before you know it, they're either in prison for tax fraud, or they're in prison because they're set up, or they're killed by business rivals. Listen, a satanic revolution is quite attractive because it's swift, it's sudden, and it's done with quickly. But a satanic revolution is guaranteed to backfire on you. It's not worth it. An actual breakthrough is often the result of a process that you go through. Breakthroughs can be the result of a revolution. That can happen. But more often, breakthroughs are the result of a process you go through. You get me? And during the process, you become better. Look at Joseph. Joseph ended up in prison for a while. But while he was in prison, he reflected on himself and he realized, man, I was too naive, this and that. He developed and he ended up ruling Egypt and ruling the world because Egypt became dominant over the whole world. So understand this: Joseph did not get a revolution. Joseph had a process, and the process was not always a pleasant one, but the process prepared him for where God wanted him to be, namely running Egypt and using the world's resources to preserve the tribes of Israel. So understand this: the process is meant to shape you in for your future. A revolution is pushing you into the future. Understand this. A revolution pushes you in the future for you to move on. A revolution pushes you, which is good. The process prepares you to handle the future. Remember that. The process prepares you to handle the future, and the revolution pushes you into the future. So a revolution and a process can go hand in hand, as they often do. But just don't idolize the revolution, because Satan can come with revolutions too. He's a monster in that, but don't take any of his revolutions. This was Satan offered Jesus when he told Jesus, I will give you all the kingdoms of the world if you just bow down and worship me. So Satan was telling Jesus, listen, just use this swift, violent, revolutionary method that the world is using, and you can get your own kingdom. And Jesus said, nah, I'm not into that. Look, a revolution can be a good thing, but it's just there to push you. It's a process that prepares you. All right? So don't unlearn this revolution fetish that church taught you. A lot of church keeps saying, oh, it's going to be revival, 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 revival. Revival never comes. And when there is revival, it's revival into witchcraft and black magic, not revival towards Christ. Church has conditioned you to be obsessed and to long for revolutions, while God often gives us a process to go through. Because there's certain things you need to be delivered from, certain things need to be worked out of you. Maybe you have a defensive attitude because you were hurt of in the past, and now you have this defensive attitude because you don't want people to hurt you. But your defensive attitude makes people feel rejected by you because you're not that vulnerable to other people. So people feel a bit like you're a bit hostile towards them, and you are because you don't want people to hurt you. So now people have difficulty relating to you. And if you're married and you have children, it's going to harm your marriage and your family. So God now brings through a process to reform you, so you lose this weight of self-protection, and now you can have a happy and joyful marriage and family life. So there are processes God puts us through to improve us. I don't know why Satan thought Jesus would listen to him, but okay, that's how reprobates are. They always think they have a chance. Okay. Well, okay. Thank you all for being here. Keep on agreeing with Christ. Be at peace, and I'll see you next time.